Hello. Today we're going to look at APAS and APAL from Bosch. We're going to look at an overview of what it is, and then we're going to go into some of the configuration. So what is APAS? APAS is a small, compact server, a little computer. You can see it's about a third of a rack U wide, 1 rack U high. It's a fanless computer, so it works silently. It's got 2 network ports, and it's pre-installed with the APAS software. Its purpose is to provide business functions, including announcements and background music, via an ergonomic web interface to make it very user-friendly. Most important to note is it's not designed for emergency situations. It's designed only for business use. For emergency announcements, you should always use a PRAESENSA call station. APAS supports 16 audio connections into PRAESENSA via Dante. And it also has a large capacity internal library, so you can store your business messages and music on this machine, or you can use external feeds via Dante or web-based resources as well. So as it says here, we can connect to internet for online services like text-to-speech and internet music providers if you need those. It's a browser-based interface. And we can drive it either from any web browser on a computer, or ideally it's very much suited to running it from an iPad or a similar device. Key features of APAS is designed for near live voice announcements, scripts for announcements, so you can actually have pre-written scripts so that your announcers can read them and have a standard script every time they make the announcement, regardless who makes the announcement. It also supports text-to-speech in multiple language, and we'll look at that later. You can also have pre-recorded messages in here. We can stream music, we can stream background music. We can schedule events such as standard messages or background music at certain times of day. And of course, we've got a local language user interface, so this means that it's much more suited to situations where you need to have maybe more than one different type of user. Maybe we have examples on ferry boats where we have different languages on board, and so we can actually customize the language to the operator. So let's look at the configuration. So before we start, we have to remember how the PRAESENSA system is configured. For those of you who've been on the training course, you know that the PRAESENSA network is a very specific high-performance network. It's not designed to share traffic with other types of internet or network devices. So we shouldn't mix the real-time networking on the PRAESENSA network with a general-purpose LAN. So in this case, we notice that the APAS device has 2 network ports, one for the PRAESENSA connection and one for the LAN connection. If we look at the diagram here, we can see the 2 network connections in action. On the bottom right, we can see our APAS server. Above it, we can see our PRAESENSA network. And then to the left, we can see the router, which provides a Wi-Fi link to our iPad for controlling the APAS device, or provides also links to the internet for internet services that we want to use within APAS. So beside me you can see I've got a working PRAESENSA system, and we're going to use that. I've pre-configured that, a basic system. So you can see here we've got a controller, an amplifier, MPS3, and a couple of call stations. And I've pre-configured that as a working system with static IP addresses. As we mentioned before, APAS can send outputs up to 16 AS channels to PRAESENSA, and of course we use the Dante controller to route that, as you can see on the right hand side. We recommend that you use reserved channels for live speech. In this presentation it says 1 channel is reserved, but check your release notes for the latest configuration in the latest versions of software. In case of simultaneous calls at the same time, so if you have multiple users with multiple iPads, there is a chance that 2 people will make a call to the same zone at the same time. In this case, we put one of those calls in a queue, so it becomes like a call stacker like we had in Presidio. APAS can also route existing BGM inputs. So for example, if you've configured your system with PRAESENSA and you've got Dante inputs fed into that one, we can route those via the APAS interface as well. Here's a diagram of our network. So you can see the blue area is our building LAN connected to our other devices. So notice we've also got a SIP server on here We're not going to discuss this in this session, but we'll discuss that in a later video. We've got our APAS server sitting on both networks, and we've got, on the left-hand side, we've got our Wi-Fi connected to our iPad. On the right side, we have our PRAESENSA LAN, and we can see the devices connected to that. So here's a quick checklist to go through when you're configuring the system. You always must have gigabit Ethernet connected to the system. PRAESENSA requires every device on it to be gigabit Ethernet. You can use the MDNS name to connect to the PRAESENSA controller. The LAN Ethernet 2 port is connected to our LAN and provides our connection to our internet and DHCP server with access to the Wi-Fi. We also need to have a PC on the LAN side to configure the system. It just makes it a little bit easier to cut and paste information, but you can do most of this configuration and operation from an iPad if you want to. We'll also need an APAS license, and we may need internet access on the LAN if you want to have internet radio, or if you want to have other services such as voice, text to voice. We'll also need some information out of the system, including the SHA fingerprint to connect to between the two systems. So first of all, when we go into configure the system, we want to go into PRAESENSA configuration and configure or enable Dante inputs 17 through 26. These are unencrypted inputs, so then they're reserved. We can use those for the Dante input from APAS. Then we also need to configure them in BGM routing. We don't route them to zones, we just need to add them in with a prefix, as you can see on the right hand side here. The APAS minus BGM minus is our prefix, and we're going to use that same prefix throughout and make sure we're consistent, as it will be replicated on the APAS configuration as well. So make a note of that prefix before you configure in APAS. If we then jump over to the APAS side, we power up our APAS unit. It takes about 2 minutes to start up, and then when it's ready to go, it plays a short audible beep. We can connect the PC LAN onto Ethernet 2, and our PRAESENSA, of course, is on Ethernet 1. So we now need to find the host name so we can connect our iPad or web browser into the APAS interface. So the host name, as you can see here, is PRAESensa with then a minus sign, then the suffix from the MAC address, then a minus sign, then ctrl.local, and the suffix is the last 7 digits of the MAC address for the Ethernet 2 port if you're connected to that port. It's easy to configure the system from Ethernet 2 side on the LAN side, where you can connect a PC or an iPad and do the configuration from there. So now let's have a look at what it looks like when we log into the system. So you can now hopefully see my screen. I'm going to connect from a computer to start with. And here you can see I've logged into the page already. I've taken the address that we created, or we got from our MAC address. So https://PRAESensa minus then the MAC address minus ctrl.local, and I connect to there, and it brings me into the login screen. So I can log in at the moment with the default information, admin and admin. And here we can see the interface. From here you've got two options here. We can see the user interface by default, and in the top corner we can also go to the settings menu. As you can see here, I've already pre-configured this just to make life easier for the video, but we'll go through it step by step and look at the different settings. So let's have a look at the settings page. So we have the following icons available. Let's do the basic setup first, which is in the settings menu here, and the PA settings menu, the second icon there. We can also configure users and areas, which we'll do later on as we go through the process. In the settings menu here we can see the network configuration on the left hand side. We have a host name for our device, which is the one we logged into, as you notice. We can see the IP address for each of the ports, Ethernet 1 going to our PA network and Ethernet 2 going to our corporate network. On the right hand side, we've got the option to set up a time server. I recommend if you're going to schedule events that you set up an NTP server and synchronize to that. Make sure you have the right time zone and time settings in here before you can continue. So let's look at PA settings. Here we've got a connection to our PRAESENSA system. We've got our host here, which is the host address of our PRAESENSA system controller. Of course, that's the same as we have made a note of on the side for connecting to our controller. So the last 6 digits of the MAC address inserted in the middle of the string there. Secure port is 9403 by default. If you change it on the PRAESENSA side, of course you need to change it on the other side. We then need the fingerprint of the system, which I'll show you in a few seconds, and here we can set our username and password to log into that system as well. So let's go over to our PRAESENSA system now and log into that. So now if I look in security settings, I look at open interface. So now I can copy this SHA-256 key carefully using cut and paste into my fingerprint on the, so now I've switched between the PRAESENSA system and the APAS system, and I can paste that into there. On the right hand side here we also need to set some other information. This needs to be set very carefully. The input prefix, well, what's that one? Let's have a look. Input prefix you can get from the configuration and system composition menu, and that's the name that you've put into the system here. So in this case it's system controller SCL space 1-1. It needs to be exactly right, so exactly the same, so cut and paste it into APAS. So it's there, okay, so we've done that already. If we go down a bit further, you'll see that there's some chimes here. Of course, they need to be existing on your PRAESENSA system. And at the bottom here, we also need to set our BGM channel prefix, which is APAS minus BGM minus. If you remember, we talked about that in the slide previously. So let's have a look in our BGM definitions. So here in my BGM definitions, you can see I've created already APAS BGM minus 17 through to 26, and we need to make sure that prefix is the same in the APAS interface. So that's correct. We don't need to change anything else in this page. We can save it. And at that point, if you have a successful connection, this little green icon should change from orange to green. If you have a red icon or orange icon, check these settings and check you have the right network configuration. If we go back to our settings here, we also see an indication here when the system is happy, so the network is connected. So we have a green icon or green round dot to indicate that the connection is correct. So now we have green dots everywhere. We should be able to try out the system. So I'm going to show you in a few seconds. If Eric would now put the iPad up on screen, we can see a live connection from the iPad. I've got a very nice bit of software so I can see it. So now I can log into the iPad here. It gives me a warning about secure connections. We can show the details and we say, yes, I want to visit this website because I know which website it is. I'm sure it's safe. Okay, so here we can see the login screen. If I now type in our username and password in here, it's going to pop up a message and tell me insufficient licenses because I'm already logged in on the laptop. So let's press OK. And it kicks out the laptop user. So here you can see we're in the iPad browser and you can see the interface. So here we've got exactly the same menus as we saw from the web interface. So we can look at these. And here in this case we can scroll through. On the laptop it's rather difficult to scroll, but you can use a tab button to move to the right hand side and move between the different icons. So let's quickly go through the icons we can see here. We've looked at settings and PA settings. Users allows you to add and manage users in the system. Areas, we can define areas, so we can have give nice names to our zones. We can have announcement scripts in here as well, so we can pre-record scripts. We can have recordings in here. We can add music sources. We can configure our text-to-speech, and we can have a look at our history and logs and our licenses here as well. Let's have a quick look at licenses, as I mentioned that already. As you can see here, we have a license in our system for one device. We can also do updates from here as well, or a factory reset. So we did configure our PA settings, so let's make sure we've got some areas configured, so we've got somewhere to send the information to. And I've actually pre-configured some things on the web page, so making it easier for the demonstration. So you can see I've already added a section called bar and restaurant, another section called conference, and we have peer F, and we have reception in here as well. So we have basically similar to a hotel or something like that. We can actually configure the areas or sections, and then we can have sub areas within those sections. So if I then go in here, I can add, for example, at the bottom here, I can add a section or add an area. An area is a sub part of a section. So you can see in the bar and restaurant we have a bistro and a sky bar. Let's have a look at the bistro, and we can see at the moment the bistro has got a name here, and we can see it's allocated to zone 1 that's been defined in PRAESENSA. It's given a name, it's part of section bar and restaurant, and we can upload an image file of our own there or an icon and have it configured there. We can also show different features, so we can allow the user to make a page or send BGM announcements or change volume. So we can allow or deny per area and per user as well. So let's find out how it works in real life. Let's make a page to the system. So go to the user menu, and we're going to do a voice message. On the iPad, we're going to use, this is what we call near live audio. So let's make a message to the sky bar. And now we can pre-record that. We've got a microphone in our iPad, so I can make an announcement. It asks me if I want to allow the microphone. I say yes, I do. Now I can start making the recording and say, welcome to this evening's open house. So if I'm in, then I can pre-listen to make sure if I'm happy about it. So I do. Now I can start making the recording and say, welcome to this evening's open house. Well, I wasn't happy with that, so I'm going to re-record it. Welcome to this evening's open house. And then I can press page, and welcome to this evening's open house. And it sends it through the system. If we look a bit further into the menus that we have, we've looked at users briefly, we've got areas, we've made a configuration in the system. We can also look at announcement scripts, and I've put a nice little script in here. So for example, this is a script that you can add in there so that you make sure that somebody who's working in the organization always reads the script exactly the same, so anybody making an announcement includes all the relevant information in that script. So we'll look at text-to-speech. In here, this is a very nice feature. It's an optional feature. Of course, you need to use a text-to-speech service, which is available from Amazon or Azure. As you can see, we've got the options at the top there to choose, and you need to subscribe to those separately. In this case, we've subscribed to Amazon Polly, and we've got an access there. And we've added in the following languages, as you can see at the bottom here: Danish, English, Norwegian, Spanish, Swedish, and US English. So we can actually use those live. So let's see how they work in reality. I'll go into text-to-speech. So if we write a simple message like that into the system, I can hide the keyboard, and I can choose a language at the bottom here. So I can choose that to be read in English. We can pre-listen it locally on the device here.
Hello and welcome.
Or I can send it out to the zone if I'm happy with it. send it to my zone here, to the sky bar.
Hello and welcome.
You'll notice also we hear a tone. This is something a really good idea to add into your system and have a tone before and after your APAS announcements, so that when you're out in the building, you know where that announcement came from. By having a standard tone that works from APAS, you know that came from an APAS device and not from one of the call stations. So here we can see the messages. And here we can play a test. So let me play the PRAESENSA announcement. I can pre-listen it on this device. Or I can send it out to one of the zones. Let's go to our bistro in this case. And it plays with the start and end tone that we've defined in the system. Finally, at the end here, we have music sources, which we've talked about already. We have those in the system. We go into our bistro, and we can choose one of our inputs there. Or we can go back and look at the scheduler very quickly. And here we can schedule messages or music. So, for example, if I want to schedule music to the sky bar certain times of day, I can add a new schedule into the system, set a music source. We're going to say, okay, we're going to use the Dante input. A music level is going to be set at this level. We call this one early evening. And then we can set it to play on a particular date or each day. Let's say each day at 1600, it's going to start playing this Dante input. So very easy to use. So that was a short introduction into PRAESENSA and APAS. Thank you for watching. If you want to find out more, please contact us at Bosch. We can also have the option to join the master training, which we run regularly throughout the year in the Nordic region and also centrally. Thank you for watching.